So I want to do a quick follow-up video, sort of a part 3 to my little series I've been doing about creating decent tones in the Helix. Here I have HX Edit up in front of me. Again, I've created a different patch this time just to try out one of the new amps, the Trainwreck model, a Derailed Ingrid. Really nice amp model. There's something I wanted to talk about as far as when I was creating the patches in the first two videos. There's a potential problem that exists there depending on whether one is using a stereo path or a mono path. And I was using a mono path, and pretty much I would say 95% of the time I use mono paths when I'm recording or playing live for that matter. I mean, guitar is a mono signal, right? There are times when you're going to want to use something else. Ping pong delay going side to side, something very atmospheric with a huge reverb that might have some different components, stereo chorus. You know, there's all sorts of effects that can really benefit and turn this, mono signal that our guitar has into something much larger than life, right? But for the most part, I'm not really using a lot of that. But a lot of people do, and there's a potential problem in the Helix if we don't understand how things are run. So I was using the dual cab setup, much like here, where I had, I can't remember if I was using the Greenback 25s, but irrelevant because whatever cab we happen to be using, that's what we're using, right? But anyways, I have a similar setup. I have one of them with a 421 dynamic mic, one of them with a 121 ribbon mic, pulled back about 4 inches. We talked about all that stuff back in the first and second video, how we can kind of blend the two using the level control. But if you have a purely stereo path going out to either your monitors, your front of house, your recording DAW, whatever it might be, what the Helix defaults to is that one of these cabs is going to be panned hard left and one of these is going to be panned hard right, which poses a bit of a problem because that's defeating what we were trying to do in blending the two mics, using it more of an EQ, using a ribbon mic for those darker, warmer tones, and then blending in a little bit of dynamic condenser mic to kind of balance the sound out a bit and get a little bit more of that bite and maybe aggression back into the sound. So it causes a problem if we had somebody creating a full stereo patch where they wanted this nice ping pong delay sound. Well, now they're going to get that, but they're also going to have one of these cabinets panned hard and panned right. And if they go to balance those and maybe pull the dynamic mic back a little bit, what's going to happen is just sort of their left side or their right side in their speakers or their headphones or whatever they're listening to is just going to go down in volume. It's not going to blend the sounds. So there are some ways we can deal with that. What I've done here is I've created a full stereo path. I'm going with a similar thing I did last time. A couple EQ blocks at the end, Dynamics studio compressor at the end, just to give it that. That was what I considered kind of my mastering section. I had a lot of people say, you shouldn't put those after the reverb and the delay, I did that on purpose because I find it gives a cohesiveness to the sound, and I'm also not using those in a really dramatic way. I'm using them as a mastering engineer might on a full record where he would be applying that processing to a delay or a reverb that's on a vocal or an acoustic guitar or an electric guitar or saxophone, whatever it might be, Anyways, that's a different point altogether. But so what I've done is I've created a full stereo path. I've went and put a stereo studio compressor, 2 stereo EQs at the end, stereo reverb, stereo delay, and you can kind of hear it right here. Now, if you're listening on a little iPhone or Samsung Galaxy or whatever on your mono speaker, you're not going to hear that ping pong delay I put on. So I'd probably recommend maybe grabbing a set of headphones or speakers or something that you can hear the stereo effect on this. So again, so anybody with listening on stereo can hear that ping pong delay going back and forth. So we're in a full stereo path right now. The problem is one of these cabinets is going to be panned fully hard and left and one fully hard right. Now, you might not even be able to pick that up right now. If I play, sounds fine, tone is nice. But if I go now and say, okay, I'm going to pull my dynamic mic back, now what you'll notice, I'm still getting my delay, but one of my speaker cabs is missing in this side. It's just gone. So I'm getting my delay and my reverb in the stereo spectrum, but all I'm getting is my cab over here. So somebody goes, oh, great. Well, that whole premise of using dual cabs is gone. I can't mix the mics, but we can. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep our stereo path. I'm just going to clear the cab block all together. And I'm going to go in and just add a single cab, same thing. I think we had the greenback 25. I'm going to add a second greenback 25. And I'm going to pull one straight down so that it's on a parallel path and no longer going to be feeding into the other cab. So now I've got two fully mono cabs that aren't going to be panned hard left and right. So I could take the first one here and say, okay, I'll use that one. I'll put my R121. I think I had it pulled back 4.5 inches. Not really that important right now. And let's go with a 421 and let's keep it as such. Now, what we're getting is our stereo delay, stereo reverb, stereo EQ. Not that that really matters, but well, it is going to be affecting both sides of the delay and reverb. But now if I go and say, well, I want a little bit less of that dynamic mic, I have a couple choices. This is a really interesting part about this. I can just pull this back a few dB. Or if I turn it off altogether, I don't lose one ear's worth of speaker cabinet, right? I have both ears still mono signal for the cabinets feeding into being stereoized, I guess, by the following effects, right? Very different than the last setup. The last setup, I had it feeding into a mono delay. So that took those two speaker cabinets and collapsed them to mono. So I was getting the effect I wanted. Perfect, no problem. Excellent. So this really solves that problem. We have parallel paths. So the amp is now feeding right into a split here, feeding the same signal to both cabinets, which then is a mono signal, which then goes to path 2 into my stereo effects down here. And it creates a great situation, which is going to give me that effect that I want. So that's awesome. But the other neat thing about the split cab, and I'll just bring this back up so both cabinet mics are at 0. So we're hearing them both the same amount. Sounds fine. Maybe for my personal taste, a little bit more of the 421 than I would like. But this is the neat part with the parallel split cabs like this. I can now go to this little block right here and click that. And this is a split. Now, the split, we have three choices basically with the Helix. We have split Y, which is a balance of both, where I could send one fully left and one fully right, just like the old situation. Okay. I don't want to do that. Put those back to center. Or I could pick split AB, which what this does now is it gives me at default setting what it says even split right here. So this is hearing both, it's feeding the signal from the amp into both speaker cabs equally. So if I go back to my top or A cab here, that's my ribbon mic. The bottom on the parallel path is my dynamic. So if I want to go back to split AB here, I could pull this slider all the way over to here so that it's just fully the A path. So it's only feeding signal to the A path. So I'm just getting my ribbon mic now. Sounds fine, but there's the ribbon mic, right? Now, alternatively, I could pull this all the way over here, and now I'm just going to get all the 421 dynamic cabinet. So there's that very dynamic mic sound. In the middle, I'm getting equal signal sent to both. It's also much louder because I have signal on both of them. So I can do something like I did in the first video now very easily with my split block. I can simply just say, well, I want less of the dynamic and I want more of the ribbon. So I could even come over here, pull it right back to all ribbon mic, hit a chord, and just roll in the dynamic mic until I'm kind of happy with where it sounds. Let's try that. Right there, you start to hear it kind of come in nicely and add a little bit of that edge. It's nice. Yeah, this is going to be down to personal preference now. Maybe somebody doesn't want any of the dynamic, in which case this would be a worthless exercise. But we might want a little bit less. That's a nice tone. Again, it depends on what you want in your mix, your live sound, and on, right? Or I could go a little bit more. All of that works, and we can just play around with it. Maybe I want more dynamic, less ribbon. That works fine too. It's a real personal preference thing at this point. I would probably end up somewhere around here. I'm thinking if this was me trying to get a tone that's going to work in a lot of situations. Again, the reason I tend to gravitate more towards the ribbon mics, I find a lot of people complain when they get the stage volume. They dial in their sound at home and it sounds fine to them. And they may, go a little more to the dynamic mics, a little more abrasive sounds that kind of cut and sound really, aggressive to them. Problem is when they get to a stage volume and they crank that up, then they're going, wait a sec, there's no bottom to this and it's really annoying and it's high end and it's grainy, and I hear all these comments about it. And I find a lot of times the patches that I dial in, they sound fine when I crank them up. They sound great at this level. They sound great on headphones. I'm in a different space. I don't have speakers here. I'm out of town actually, so I'm just kind of doing this from remotely on my laptop. They sound great on headphones. They sound great through my studio monitors. They sound great through my FRFR speaker, even cranked up at high volume. It's just a nice, even sound. So because I have that warmer tone dialed in, utilizing heavily towards the ribbon mic side of things, when I crank it up at stage volume, it's fine. It works great. So something to keep in mind if you struggle with that. And again, this is all personal preference, right? Stuff that I'm going to do isn't going to work for everybody. Other people have different opinions about it and different ears and, are looking for a different thing. So there's no right and wrong here. I'm just throwing out the ideas that I've found have worked for me. So this works really nice, and it's a very quick way. Now, even if you're using the strictly monopath like we did in the previous video, you could still use a split cab like this, create two mono cabs, and then use your split block right here to balance those two sounds together. It's a really, probably a preferable way for me, to be honest with you. The reason I covered the other one first was, Line 6 has the dual cab feature built in there. All right, but a lot of people get caught in that trap where they don't maybe fully realize that, oh, this is a stereo signal panned left and right. How do I get rid of that? And they've got to put a block, some sort of a block after it, whether it be a mono EQ, mono delay, or something to collapse that down. I think they also said, if I'm not mistaken, that if you simply just take one output out of the Helix, it also just automatically collapses that to mono too. So that would save a lot of hassle as well. So that's just something I wanted to cover. I hope I covered everything on that, and I hope that helped some people. It's just another of the ways that we can use this incredible, amazing tool that Line 6 has given us, the Helix, and they've really put a pile of thought into this and offered us so many possibilities. It's really one of the most amazing tools, in my opinion, out there. And I've been through millions, no, not millions, okay, I'm being ridiculous there, but I've been through a lot of tube amps, real mics, real pedals, like a lot of you have, and this has cured me of that desire to actually go anywhere near anything else, because almost everything is in here. I'm sure there's a couple things we could all think of that we wish it had, but who knows, it's likely going to happen anyways. So stay tuned. I'm going to do a part 4 on this, where I dive a little bit more into some of the deeper functions, sag, hum, ripple, bias, X, and these various functions in the next video. And please leave any of your comments in the comments below. I'll happy to answer any questions I have time to. And if you have any ideas or, for other videos or questions that you want answered in that way, I can see what I can do for that too. But thanks for all your support. Please like the video, share it, and hit the subscribe button if you are so inclined. And we'll see you guys soon. Take care.